In the chaotic heart of the city, a girl invisible to the world survives among shadows and scraps. A whisper from an alley reveals a cold plan: cut the brakes of a car and kill its millionaire owner. No one will believe a dirty, unknown child, but she races against time to warn the victim. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The bitter December wind whistled through Manhattan's concrete canyons, carrying snowflakes that stung like tiny needles against exposed skin. 12-year-old Lily Harper pulled her tattered coat tighter around her small frame, her fingertips blue from the cold. For 3 years, the streets of New York had been her home, the alleyways her bedroom, and the city's discarded treasures her only possessions. Most people walked past her without a second glance. In a city of 8 million dreams, one homeless child became invisible, just another shadow cast by the towering skyscrapers that defined the Manhattan skyline. Lily had learned that invisibility could be both a curse and a blessing. It meant loneliness, but it also meant safety. That morning, as the city awoke to another freezing day, Lily emerged from her makeshift shelter, a small alcove behind a dumpster in the financial district. Her stomach growled fiercely. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, when a kind barista had slipped her a day-old muffin and a cup of hot chocolate while his manager wasn't looking. Just another day, she whispered to herself, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Just find something to eat, stay warm, and keep moving. Her routine was well established. She would start by checking the trash behind several cafes and bakeries before they were emptied. Then she would warm up in the public library, pretending to read while actually resting in the heated building. By afternoon, she'd make her way to Bryant Park, where tourists sometimes left behind food or dropped coins she could collect. Lily was more resourceful than most children her age. She had to be. Before life on the streets, she had been a bright student, always at the top of her class. Her mother, Sarah Harper, had been a single parent who worked 2 jobs to provide for her daughter. They didn't have much, but they had each other, until the illness took Sarah away 3 years ago. With no known relatives and a foster system, Lily had quickly learned to fear. She chose the streets instead. As she rummaged through the trash behind a popular breakfast spot on Wall Street, Lily heard voices coming from a narrow service alley between 2 gleaming corporate towers. Normally, she would have ignored them. Minding your own business was a fundamental rule of survival, but something in their hushed, urgent tone made her pause. 2 men stood deep in the shadows, their expensive coats and polished shoes at odds with their furtive behavior. Lily crouched behind a stack of empty produce crates, her curiosity getting the better of her caution. "It has to look like an accident," said the taller of the 2 men, his voice barely above a whisper. "Victoria's been very clear about that." "Trust me, it's foolproof," the second man replied. He was shorter but more muscular, with a military-style haircut. "I worked in his garage last night. The brake lines have been compromised. Not enough to fail immediately, but once he hits the highway speeds on his way upstate this afternoon, well, no one will question it." Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. They were talking about sabotaging someone's car, a plan that would surely result in a terrible accident. "And you're sure it can't be traced back?" the first man asked. "Impossible. It'll look like mechanical failure. These luxury cars, they're complicated. Things go wrong all the time." "Victoria's transfer cleared this morning. Half now, half when it's done," the taller man said, handing over an envelope. "She wants her husband out of the picture permanently. Once she takes control of Mitchell Enterprises, our arrangement continues as discussed." Lily's blood turned colder than the winter air. Mitchell Enterprises. She knew that name. Everyone in New York did. The company's gleaming headquarters dominated the skyline just a few blocks away. Its founder and CEO, Robert Mitchell, was one of the richest men in America. His face regularly appeared on business magazines and television interviews. And now, if she understood correctly, his wife was trying to harm him. The men continued talking, discussing their payment and how they would meet later to confirm the job was complete. Lily remained frozen in place, trying to process what she was hearing. Should she run? Tell someone? Who would believe a homeless child? Just as she was about to retreat, her foot slipped on a patch of ice. She grabbed at the crates to steady herself, but they shifted, scraping loudly against the concrete. The men stopped talking instantly. "Someone's there," the muscular one said sharply. Lily didn't wait. She bolted from her hiding place, running as fast as her undernourished body would allow. Behind her she heard footsteps, but she knew these streets better than anyone. She darted through a narrow gap between buildings that adults couldn't easily navigate, then across a busy street, causing cars to honk as she weaved through the morning traffic. By the time she reached the relative safety of a crowded subway entrance, she was certain she had lost them. But now she faced an impossible dilemma. She had overheard a plot that could result in serious harm to someone. But who would listen to her? Lily sat on a bench in the subway station, trying to catch her breath and think clearly. Her mother had always taught her to do the right thing, no matter how difficult. "Your character is defined by what you do when nobody's watching," Sarah used to say. Making up her mind, Lily headed toward the imposing Mitchell Enterprises building. Its glass and steel facade stretched toward the clouds, a monument to wealth and power, the kind of place someone like her would never be welcome. The lobby was a vast expanse of marble and modern art, with security guards stationed at sleek desks and turnstiles that required electronic badges. Lily approached the main desk, her heart pounding. "I need to see Mr. Mitchell," she said to the security guard, a broad-shouldered man with a stern expression. "It's important." The guard barely glanced at her disheveled appearance before responding. "Kid, you can't just walk in here and ask to see Robert Mitchell. He's one of the busiest men in New York." "Please," Lily insisted, her voice rising with urgency. "Someone is planning to hurt him. I heard them talking about his car." "Right." The guard cut her off. "And I'm sure you also have national security secrets to share with the president. Now move along before I have to call someone." Lily felt tears of frustration welling in her eyes. "You don't understand. His wife is behind." "It? They said her name, Victoria. They've done something to his car brakes." This caught the attention of a woman in a tailored suit who was passing through the lobby. She paused, looking at Lily with curiosity rather than dismissal. "What did you just say?" the woman asked, approaching them. "Ma'am, I'm handling this," the guard began, but the woman held up her hand. "I'm Sarah Williams, Mr. Mitchell's executive assistant," she said to Lily. "What's this about his wife and his car?" Lily took a deep breath. This might be her only chance. "I heard two men talking in an alley. They said Victoria paid them to tamper with his brakes so he'd have an accident on his way upstate today. They made it sound like she wants to take over his company." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "That's a very serious accusation." "I know what I heard," Lily said firmly. "They mentioned Mitchell. Enterprises by name. They said the money had already been transferred." The assistant exchanged a look with the security guard, then turned back to Lily. "What's your name?" Lily Harper." "Well, Lily Harper, wait here with Officer Davis for a moment." Lily watched nervously as Sarah walked away, speaking quietly into her phone. Was she calling the police? Would they arrest her for causing trouble? Her instinct to run was overwhelming, but something kept her rooted to the spot. If what she had overheard was true, and she did nothing. 5 minutes later, Sarah returned with a tall, serious-looking man in a dark suit. "This is Michael Hayes, our head of security," Sarah explained. "He has some questions for you." Michael knelt down to Lily's level, his expression neither friendly nor hostile, just intensely focused. "Lily, I need you to tell me exactly what you heard, where you heard it, and when. Every detail matters." For the next 10 minutes, Lily recounted everything. The location of the alley, the appearance of the two men, their exact words as best she could remember. Michael listened without interrupting, then stood up. "Sarah, get Robert on the line now. And have the garage secure his car. No one touches it until our team has inspected it." He turned to Lily. "If what you're saying is true, you may have just saved a man's life." Lily wasn't sure if she should feel relieved or terrified. All she knew was that for the first time in 3 years, someone was actually listening to her. Robert Mitchell stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 58th floor. From this height, New York City spread beneath him, like a living, breathing organism, streets forming arteries, buildings rising like cells, people moving like microscopic particles in a vast system. At 52, he had built an empire that few could rival. Mitchell Enterprises had transformed from a small tech startup 25 years ago into a global conglomerate with interests in everything from sustainable energy to medical technology. But success had come at a price. His marriage to Victoria had grown increasingly distant over the past 5 years. They lived separate lives under the same expansive roof of their Westchester mansion. It wasn't always that way. When they'd met 15 years ago, Victoria had been brilliant, ambitious, and seemingly supportive. He'd believed they were partners in every sense. Now he sometimes wondered if she had ever loved him, or merely the empire he was building. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was Sarah, his executive assistant of 8 years, and one of the few people he trusted implicitly. "Mr. Mitchell, I need you to stay in your office. Michael Hayes is coming up with some concerning information. It's urgent." Robert frowned. Michael wasn't one for exaggeration or unnecessary alarms. "What's this about, Sarah?" There was a brief hesitation. "It involves Mrs. Mitchell, sir, and your safety." Before he could ask for clarification, Sarah ended the call. Robert loosened his tie slightly, a rare display of discomfort for a man known for his unflappable composure. 10 minutes later, Michael Hayes entered the office with Sarah and an unexpected third visitor, a small, disheveled girl who looked no older than 12. "Robert," Michael began, dispensing with formalities as he often did in private, "I need you to listen carefully. Our security team has just inspected your car. The brake lines have been compromised, deliberately." Robert felt the floor shift beneath him. "What are you saying?" "Had you driven that car, especially at highway speeds on your planned trip, to the Albany facility this afternoon, you would have lost control completely. The failure was engineered to occur gradually, making it appear as a mechanical failure rather than sabotage." Robert sank into his chair, his mind racing to process this information. "How did you know to check the car?" Michael gestured to the girl standing uncertainly near the door. "Because of her. This is Lily Harper. She overheard 2 men discussing the plan this morning, including how they'd been paid to ensure you had an accident." Robert's eyes fixed on the child. She was painfully thin, her clothes worn and inadequate for the December weather, her face smudged with city grime. But her eyes, clear, intelligent, and direct, met his without wavering. "They mentioned your wife by name," Michael continued, his voice professional but strained. "They said once you were out of the picture, Victoria would take control of the company." Robert felt the blood drain from his face. He'd suspected Victoria was unhappy, perhaps even resentful of his success. But this was unthinkable. "We've already contacted legal, and I've assembled a team to discreetly investigate Mrs. Mitchell's financial activities," Michael added. "I've also increased security around you, though we're keeping it subtle to avoid tipping anyone off." Robert nodded mechanically, then turned his attention to the girl who stood awkwardly by the door. "You came here to warn me?" Lily nodded. "The security guard didn't believe me at first. Then Ms. Williams heard me and brought Mr. Hayes." "Why?" Robert asked simply. "Why would you, a complete stranger, go to such lengths?" Lily looked puzzled by the question. "Because it was wrong. They were going to hurt you. Anyone would have done the same. But they wouldn't have," Robert thought. Most people would have walked away, convinced it wasn't their problem or too afraid to get involved. Especially someone with so little, who risked what little safety they had. "Thank you isn't adequate, but it's where I'll start," he said quietly. Then, noticing how she shivered slightly despite the well-heated office, he asked, "Lily, do you have somewhere to go? Parents or relatives who are expecting you?" A shadow passed over her face. "No, sir. My mum passed away 3 years ago. It's just me." Sarah and Michael exchanged glances, and Robert understood what wasn't being said. This child was homeless, alone in one of the world's most unforgiving cities. "When did you last eat?" Sarah asked gently. Lily hesitated. "Yesterday afternoon, a muffin." Robert stood up abruptly, making a decision. "Sarah, please have the kitchen send up lunch for 4. Michael, I want a full security detail assembled but kept discreet. And Lily," he turned to the girl, "I'd like you to stay here for a while if that's all right. You're not in any trouble, but we may need to ask you more questions. And it seems we owe you a proper meal at the very least." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Lily's face. I should probably go." "Please," Robert said, surprising himself with the genuine request in his voice. "You've done something extraordinary today. Allow us to thank you properly." While they waited for the food, Robert asked Lily about herself. Each answer revealed another layer of a story that twisted something in his chest: her mother's illness, the lack of relatives, her decision to avoid foster care after hearing horror stories from other kids on the street, her makeshift shelters, the daily search for food, the constant vigilance required to stay safe, how she spent hours in the public library, continuing her education as best she could. "I promised my mom I'd keep learning," she explained. "She was a teacher before she got sick. She always said education was the one thing no one could take from you." The food arrived, a spread of sandwiches, soups, fresh fruit, and pastries that made Lily's eyes widen. Though clearly ravenous, she ate with careful restraint, as if afraid the food might disappear if she showed too much enthusiasm. While she ate, Robert stepped aside with Michael to discuss the immediate security concerns. The mechanic who had serviced his cars for years would be questioned, as would the building's garage security team. Meanwhile, a forensic accountant would examine Victoria's financial transactions, looking for the alleged payments. "What about the girl?" Michael asked quietly, glancing at Lily, who was now engaged in conversation with Sarah. "We should contact Child Services." Robert felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. "Not yet. She risked everything to warn me. I'm not going to repay that by immediately turning her over to a system she clearly fears." He paused, thinking. "My sister Rachel is a social worker. Let me call her first. She'll know the best approach." The afternoon progressed with a surreal quality. While Robert's team quietly investigated the murder plot against him, he found himself increasingly intrigued by Lily. Despite her circumstances, she possessed a sharp mind and remarkable resilience. When Sarah brought in some basic clothes and toiletries purchased from a nearby department store, Lily's gratitude was palpable but dignified. By evening, the initial findings were troubling. 2 substantial wire transfers had been traced from Victoria's personal account to offshore accounts. The garage security footage showed an unknown man accessing Robert's car late the previous night, a man who had used an authentic security badge and code. Robert's phone rang. It was Rachel returning his call. "I need your help with a situation," he said after they exchanged greetings. "It involves a child." "That's unexpected," his sister replied. "What's going on, Rob?" "It's complicated. Can you come to my office tonight?" There was a pause. "This sounds serious. I'll be there in an hour." After hanging up, Robert returned to the conference room where Lily was sitting with Sarah. The girl looked cleaner, but utterly exhausted, fighting to keep her eyes open. "Lily," he said gently, "my sister is coming to talk with us. She works with children who need help finding safe places to live. But I promise you won't be forced to go anywhere tonight. You can stay here in the building where it's safe and warm." Lily tensed visibly. "Are you sending me to foster care?" "No decisions will be made without your input," he assured her. Now I just want you to rest. We have a guest suite on this floor for visiting executives. It has a proper bed, a bathroom, even some clean clothes that might fit you." The mention of a real bed seemed to overcome her wariness. Sarah led her to the suite, while Robert returned to his office, his mind racing between the betrayal of his wife and the unexpected twist of fate that had brought a homeless child to his door, a child who had quite possibly saved his life. An hour later, Rachel arrived. She had the same dark hair and blue eyes as her brother, but where Robert was reserved and controlled, Rachel was expressive and warm. After he explained the day's events, she sat in stunned silence. "Victoria tried to... I can't even say it," she finally managed. "Rob, I never liked her, but this is beyond comprehension." "I know." The police have been quietly notified, but we're proceeding carefully until we have irrefutable evidence. And this girl, Lily, she's the one who overheard the plan? Robert nodded. She risked everything to warn me, a complete stranger. Rachel's expression softened. Where is she now? Asleep in the executive suite. Sarah checked on her a few minutes ago. What are you planning to do about her situation? Robert looked out at the night skyline, the city now a constellation of lights against the darkness. I don't know yet, but I can't send her back to the streets, and after what she did today, I feel responsible for her. Rachel studied her brother carefully. You know, in all the years since Jessica died, I've never heard you express interest in any child's welfare. You closed that door so firmly. Robert flinched at the mention of his late daughter. The car accident that took Jessica had been 15 years ago, but the pain remained a constant companion buried beneath layers of work and achievement. This is different, he said quietly. Is it? Rachel asked. Or has this girl somehow found a way past those walls you built? Robert had no answer. All he knew was that as the day's events unfolded around him, the betrayal, the danger, the investigation, his thoughts kept returning to Lily Harper, the child who had emerged from the shadows of his city to alter the course of his life. Victoria Mitchell stood in her walk-in closet, methodically selecting her outfit for the evening's charity gala. The process usually brought her pleasure. The feel of expensive fabrics, the power of a perfectly curated appearance. Tonight, however, her movements were mechanical, her mind elsewhere. By now the plan should have been executed. Robert should have been on his way to the Albany facility. His car should have failed, and the first phase of her carefully orchestrated takeover would be complete. The company's shares would plummet temporarily with news of the accident, allowing her secret partners to acquire significant holdings before she assumed control as the grieving widow. Then, Mitchell Enterprises would take a new direction, one that would make her previous partners very wealthy and herself unimaginably powerful. Her phone rang, displaying a number she recognized but had never saved in her contacts. Cautious. As always, she answered with a neutral, "Yes?" "We have a problem." The voice was tense, lacking the confirmation she had been expecting. Victoria moved deeper into the closet, away from where her housekeeper might overhear. "Explain." "He never left the building. Something's wrong. Security around him has increased and there's unusual activity in the executive suite." Victoria's blood ran cold. "Has our connection been compromised?" "Unknown. But the operation is definitely stalled." "Stay away from the building," she instructed. "I'll contact you when I know more." She ended the call, her mind racing through possibilities. Had Robert simply changed his plans, or had something more concerning occurred? She selected a midnight blue gown and diamond jewelry, understated elegance appropriate for a woman of her station. Tonight she would attend the Children's Hospital benefit as planned. Her absence would raise questions, especially if Robert attended as well. She needed to appear completely normal while she assessed the situation. As she dressed, Victoria reflected on the path that had led her here. 15 years ago, she had been Victoria Chambers, brilliant, ambitious, and destined for greatness according to everyone who knew her. Then she met Robert Mitchell, recently widowed and already enormously successful. The marriage had seemed perfect. He gained a poised, intelligent partner who helped elevate his social standing, while she gained access to power and resources beyond her imagination. But over time, she'd grown to resent his control over the empire they'd built together. Her suggestions were considered but rarely implemented. Her vision for the company's future was acknowledged but sidelined in favor of Robert's more conservative approach. She was the face of Mitchell Enterprises' charitable foundation, not its strategic future. 3 years ago, she'd met James Harrington at a technology conference in Boston. Ambitious and ruthless in ways Robert had never been, James recognized Victoria's untapped potential. Together, they began formulating a plan that would free her from Robert's shadow and position Mitchell Enterprises at the forefront of emerging markets that Robert was too cautious to enter. The final piece had fallen into place 6 months ago when she'd discovered Robert's will. Despite their prenuptial agreement limiting her financial claim in case of divorce, His death would leave her with controlling interest in the company, a sentimental decision he'd made years earlier and apparently never revised. Victoria finished. Applying her makeup, her hands steady despite the uncertainty churning inside her. Whatever had gone wrong, she would navigate it. She always did. Across town in the executive suite of Mitchell Enterprises, Lily Harper woke from the deepest sleep she'd had in years. For a moment, panic seized her as she failed to recognize her surroundings. The soft bed, the plush carpet, the gleaming bathroom visible through an open door, none of it aligned with her reality. Then the day's events came rushing back. The men in the alley, the sabotaged car, meeting Robert Mitchell, the kind executive assistant, the security directors. Questions. She had fallen asleep almost immediately after being shown to this room, her body surrendering to exhaustion and the unaccustomed comfort. A gentle knock at the door startled her. "Lily, are you awake?" It was Sarah Williams, Robert's assistant. "Yes," Lily called, quickly sitting up and attempting to smooth her hair. Sarah entered carrying a shopping bag. "I hope you slept." "Well, I brought you some more clothes, proper winter things this time." She set the bag on a chair. "And there's food in the conference room whenever you're ready." Lily eyed the bag with a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. She wasn't used to charity, had in fact gone to great lengths to avoid it. On the streets, accepting help often meant owing something in return, and those debts could be dangerous. Sarah seemed to sense her hesitation. "Mr. Mitchell insists, and honestly, I think helping you is helping him process everything that's happened today." Lily nodded slowly. Is he okay?" "As well as can be expected when you discover your wife may have been planning to harm you," Sarah replied, her professional demeanor slipping slightly to reveal genuine concern. "He's meeting with the security team and some legal advisors right now." After Sarah left, Lily took her first hot shower in memory. The sensation was almost overwhelming, clean water as much as she wanted at whatever temperature she desired. She stayed under the spray until her skin pruned, washing away years of grime and hardship. The clothes in the bag fit perfectly: jeans, sweaters, thermal underwear, thick socks, new sneakers, even a warm winter coat. Lily stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. With her face clean, her dark brown hair still damp from the shower, and wearing new clothes, she looked like any ordinary kid. The transformation was so complete, it was unsettling. When she finally ventured out to the conference room, she found Robert Mitchell sitting alone, reviewing documents. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening. "Lily," he said, setting aside his papers, "you look rested, and the clothes fit good." "Thank you," she said, still standing awkwardly near the door. "For everything. I should probably go soon, though." Robert gestured to the food laid out on the conference table: sandwiches, fruit, cookies, and hot chocolate. "Not before you eat something. And actually, I'd like to talk to you about your situation, if that's all right." Lily approached the table cautiously and selected a sandwich. Her street instincts told her to take as much as possible. Food was never guaranteed tomorrow, but her pride kept her from appearing greedy. "My sister, Rachel, came by while you were sleeping," Robert continued as she ate. "She's a social worker specializing in cases involving children." Lily tensed, sandwich halfway to her mouth. "I'm not going into the system." "I understand your concern," Robert said carefully. "Rachel explained that for many kids, foster care can be traumatic, but staying on the streets during a New York winter isn't a viable option either. I've managed for 3 years, Lily countered, though they both knew that managed was a generous description of mere survival. Robert studied her for a moment. What if there was a third option? My sister has suggested an emergency placement program for youth in transition. It provides temporary housing in screened volunteer homes while more permanent arrangements are considered. Lily set down her sandwich, suspicion evident in her posture. "And what happens after temporary?" "That would depend partly on what you want," Robert replied, surprising her. "Rachel believes that given your circumstances, no living relatives, your clear intelligence and self-sufficiency, you might be a candidate for an independent living program once you're a bit older." In the meantime, you'd need a stable environment, access to education and proper support. Lily absorbed this information cautiously. It sounded too good to be true, which in her experience meant it probably was. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. Robert was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. You saved my life today, Lily. That creates a connection. But beyond that, I see something in you that reminds me of someone I lost a long time ago. My daughter, Jessica. She would have been about your age now. The admission hung in the air between them, unexpected and heavy with emotion. What happened to her? Lily asked softly. Car accident. She was 8. Robert rarely spoke of Jessica, had compartmentalized that grief so thoroughly that even his closest colleagues knew not to mention her. Yet here he was, sharing this with a child he'd met only hours ago. I'm sorry, Lily said, and the simple sincerity in her voice reached something in Robert that elaborate condolences never had. He cleared his throat. The point is, I can't in good conscience send you back to the streets. Not after what you did for me and not knowing what I now know about your circumstances. Will you at least consider the placement program Rachel suggested? You'd be safe. Warm, fed and back in school. Lily considered the offer, weighing it against her limited options. Winter was getting worse. Food was scarcer, and despite her street smarts, she knew the odds of surviving another year without serious harm were diminishing. I'll think about it, she finally said. Robert nodded, accepting this as progress. That's all I ask. In the meantime, you're welcome to stay here tonight. The building has excellent security, and we can make up the guest suite properly. Their conversation was interrupted by Michael Hayes entering the conference room, his expression grave. Robert, we've confirmed the transfers from Victoria's accounts. 2 payments of $50,000 each to offshore accounts linked to Eric Donovan and Devin Mercer. Both ex-military, both with mechanical expertise, both previously employed by corporations competing with Mitchell Enterprises. Robert's jaw tightened. And Victoria? She's attending the Children's Hospital benefit as scheduled. We have people watching her, but we're being discreet. The police want more concrete evidence before making any moves. What about the men who sabotaged the car? Lily asked, then immediately looked apologetic for interrupting. Michael turned to her with unexpected respect. Good question. We've identified them from security footage and your descriptions. They're under surveillance. We believe they don't know their plan has been discovered. Robert stood up, decision made. I'm going to the benefit. Both Michael and Lily looked at him in alarm. Is that safe? Lily asked. It's controlled risk, Robert replied. Victoria needs to believe everything is normal while we build our case. If I suddenly cancel, she'll know something's wrong. Michael clearly disagreed, but knew better than to argue once Robert had made up his mind. I'll arrange additional security. Plain clothes only, nothing obvious. And Lily? Robert asked, turning to the girl. Will you be all right here with Sarah for a few hours? The question surprised her, the idea that her comfort would be a consideration in his plans. I'll be fine, she assured him. Just be careful. As Robert left to prepare for the evening, Lily couldn't help but wonder at the strange turn her life had taken. This morning, she had been invisible, surviving on the margins of society. Now she was at the center of a drama involving one of New York's most powerful families, with her future suddenly full of possibilities she had long ago stopped imagining. Sarah returned with a tablet loaded with books and games, and the offer to order dinner from any restaurant Lily might choose. The kindness was overwhelming, almost disorienting after years of deprivation. As night fell over Manhattan, Lily stood at the window of the executive suite, watching the city lights flicker on. Somewhere out there, Robert Mitchell was about to face the woman who had planned his demise. And somewhere else, the men who had tried to carry out that plan were still free. Despite the luxury surrounding her, Lily couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. This story wasn't over yet, and somehow she had become entangled in its unfolding chapters. The Metropolitan Museum of Art glowed against the night sky, its grand facade illuminated for the Children's Hospital benefit. Limousines and luxury cars lined Fifth Avenue as New York's elite arrived in formal attire, ready to be seen, photographed, and acknowledged for their philanthropy. Robert Mitchell adjusted his bow tie as his car approached the museum entrance. Normally, Victoria would have been beside him, her presence completing the image of the power couple that dominated New York's business and social landscapes. Tonight, they had arrived separately. She had texted that she was already inside, having come directly from a spa appointment. A convenient excuse, Robert thought, to avoid sharing a car with the husband she had allegedly planned to harm. "We have 6 security personnel inside," Michael murmured from the seat beside him. Against Robert's wishes, he had insisted on accompanying him, 2 more at each exit, and 4 circulating among the guests, all plainclothes, all looking like typical security for an event of this caliber. Robert nodded, his expression betraying nothing of the turmoil within. "And Victoria? Arrived 30 minutes ago. She's in the Temple of Dender gallery speaking with the mayor's wife." The car stopped at the red carpet. Robert took a deep breath, adopting the confident demeanor expected of him. Camera flashes erupted as he stepped out, smiling and waving to the press line. "Mr. Mitchell, over here." "Robert, where's Victoria tonight?" "Mitchell, a statement on the new clean energy initiative?" He answered a few questions with practiced ease, never breaking stride as he made his way into the museum. Inside, the Great Hall had been transformed into an elegant reception area with champagne flowing freely and New York's most influential citizens engaging in the practiced dance of social networking. And there she was, Victoria Mitchell, resplendent in midnight blue, her dark hair swept up to reveal the elegant line of her neck, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. She was laughing at something the mayor was saying, her hand resting lightly on his arm in a gesture of charming familiarity. She looked up, catching Robert's eye across the room. Not a flicker of guilt or concern crossed her perfect features. Instead, she smiled, that camera-ready smile that had graced countless society pages, and excused herself to approach her husband. "Darling, there you are," she said, kissing his cheek. Her perfume, Clive Christian, her signature scent, enveloped him. "I was beginning to worry you'd be caught up at the office all night." Robert returned the kiss, playing his part, just finalizing some details for tomorrow's board meeting. The lie came easily. Tomorrow's meeting had been on his calendar for weeks, but he had intended to be in Albany today, not attending it. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "The Albany trip. I thought that was today." "Postponed," he said simply. "Some issues came up that required my immediate attention in the city." Something flickered in Victoria's expression, uncertainty, perhaps concern, but it vanished so quickly that someone who didn't know her well would have missed it entirely. "How fortunate," she said smoothly. "It would have been a shame to miss tonight's event. The Foundation has pledged $2 million to the new pediatric oncology wing." They circulated together through the gathering, the picture of marital harmony. Robert exchanged pleasantries with city officials, accepted congratulations on Mitchell Enterprises' record quarterly earnings, and discussed charitable initiatives with fellow philanthropists, all while acutely aware that the woman by his side had potentially orchestrated his demise. "Victoria, Robert," called Eleanor Whitmore, chair of the hospital board, "the silent auction is about to close. I hope you've placed your bids." Victoria smiled warmly. "Of course, Eleanor. Robert has his eye on that Montana fly fishing package, don't you, darling?" "Actually," Robert replied, "I was more interested in the summer camp scholarship fund. Providing opportunities for underprivileged children seems particularly important right now." He watched Victoria carefully as he spoke. Her smile remained fixed, but something hardened in her eyes. "Always thinking of others," she said, her tone light, but her grip tightening on his arm. "It's one of the things I've always loved about you." The evening progressed with excruciating slowness. Robert maintained his composure through dinner, through the speeches, through the check presentation ceremony where he and Victoria jointly handed over an oversized representation of their foundation's donation, all while his security team discreetly monitored the room and continued their investigation behind the scenes. Shortly before midnight, Victoria touched his arm. "I have a bit of a headache coming on." Would you mind terribly if I went home? You can stay if you'd like. I know Senator Blackwell wanted to discuss that energy bill with you. Robert studied his wife's face, searching for signs of deception. Was this another part of her plan, or merely a convenient exit from an evening that had served its purpose for her? Of course, he said. I'll have the car brought around for you. No need, she replied. I've already texted Martin. He should be waiting outside. Martin, their longtime chauffeur. Another person in their orbit who would need to be questioned, Robert realized. How deep did this conspiracy go? Feel better, he said, kissing her cheek in a performance for anyone watching. I won't be too late. As Victoria made her graceful exit, Michael approached, keeping his voice low. The police have enough to bring in Donovan and Mercer for questioning. They're moving on them now. Robert nodded, maintaining his social smile, while discussing matters of life and death. And Victoria? We're tracking her. She's not going home, at least not yet. Her phone signal is moving toward Midtown. Follow her, Robert instructed, but maintain distance. I want to know where she goes, who she meets. Michael slipped away, and Robert continued his social obligations for another 30 minutes before making his own exit. In the car, he called the secure line that had been established with the Mitchell Enterprises security team. Update, he demanded, as soon as the call connected. Donovan and Mercer are in custody, reported the security officer. They're not talking yet, but the evidence from the car is irrefutable. The forensic team found tool marks matching equipment in Mercer's garage and trace evidence placing Donovan at the scene. And Victoria? Her car went to the Four Seasons. She's meeting with someone in the hotel bar. We have people inside, but they're keeping their distance. Robert considered his next move. I want to go to the office. Sir, at this hour? I need to check on Lily, he interrupted. And I want to be there when we get confirmation of who Victoria is meeting. The mention of Lily shifted his thoughts. Throughout the evening, amid the tension and deception, his mind had repeatedly returned to the girl. Her courage, her resilience, the way she had risked her own safety to warn a stranger. There was something extraordinary about her that went beyond her role in uncovering Victoria's plot. When he arrived at Mitchell Enterprises, the building was quiet. Most floors darkened except for the security lighting. The executive floor, however, was partially illuminated. Sarah had stayed late, working in her office while keeping an eye on Lily. She's still awake, Sarah reported when Robert entered. I tried to get her to sleep, but she insisted on waiting up for you. Robert found Lily in the conference room, curled up in one of the large leather chairs with a tablet, reading intently. She looked up when he entered, relief evident on her face. You're okay, she said, as if she had been genuinely worried. I'm fine, he assured her, touched by her concern. Victoria doesn't suspect anything yet. Lily set down the tablet. The security man, Michael, he called a little while ago. He said they arrested the two men from the alley. Robert nodded, loosening his bow tie and sinking into a chair opposite her. That's right. They're being questioned now. What happens next? She asked, her eyes serious beyond her years. Robert considered how much to share with her. She had already been drawn into this situation far more than any child should be, yet she had demonstrated remarkable maturity and perception. Victoria is meeting someone at a hotel right now. Security is watching her, gathering evidence. Once we have enough proof of her involvement, the police will take appropriate action. Lily absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. She really wanted to hurt you, she said, not as a question but as a statement of fact she was still processing. It appears that way, Robert acknowledged, the reality of it still difficult to fully comprehend despite the mounting evidence. Why? Don't you have enough money for both of you? The question, in its childlike directness, caught Robert off guard. He actually laughed, a short, surprised sound that released some of the tension he'd been carrying all evening. It's not always about money, Lily. Sometimes it's about power, control, ambition. Victoria and our marriage hasn't been real for a long time. I just didn't realize how far gone it was. Lily nodded as if this made perfect sense to her. People can hide who they really are. On the streets, you learn that fast. The ones who seem nicest sometimes want the most from you. The wisdom in her observation struck Robert. How many adults in his life had hidden their true nature behind polished veneers? How many business deals, philanthropic gestures, or social connections were merely facades concealing less noble intentions? "My sister Rachel called while you were out," Lily continued, changing the subject. "She seems nice. She talked to me about that program you mentioned." "And?" Robert prompted gently. Lily hesitated. "I told her I'd try it, just to see. But I made her promise I could leave if it doesn't work out." "That's fair," Robert said, genuinely pleased by this development. "Rachel will make sure you're placed somewhere safe, with people who understand your situation." Before Lily could respond, Robert's phone rang. It was Michael. "Victoria just left the hotel," he reported without preamble. "She met with James Harrington." Robert felt his jaw tighten. James Harrington, CEO of Criterion Technologies, one of Mitchell Enterprises' main competitors, a man known for his ruthless business tactics and questionable ethics. "Were you able to record their conversation?" "Partial audio only. The bar was crowded, but we caught enough. They discussed next steps now that the initial plan had been delayed. Harrington mentioned something about market position and leveraged buyouts. Victoria assured him everything was still on track." Robert ended the call, his mind racing with implications. This wasn't just a wife trying to eliminate her, husband for inheritance or insurance money. This was corporate espionage, a calculated attempt to seize control of Mitchell Enterprises and potentially transfer its assets or technology to a competitor. Lily watched him with concern. "Bad news?" "Complicated news," Robert answered, trying to shield her from the full weight of the situation. "It seems Victoria was working with one of my business rivals." Lily's expression darkened. "So it wasn't just about hurting you. It was about taking your company, too." Her perception was startling. "That's right. What will you do now?" It was a simple question that required a complex answer. Robert had built his empire through strategic thinking, careful planning, and decisive action when necessary. Those same skills would now be required to protect everything he had created, and perhaps in the process, to rebuild the parts of his life that had withered while he focused solely on business success. "First, I ensure that Victoria and her accomplices face justice," he said firmly. "Then I secure the company against any vulnerability this situation might have created." He paused, looking at Lily with newfound resolve. "And I make sure you have the future you deserve, starting tomorrow." Lily's eyes widened slightly at being included in his priorities. "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to," Robert interrupted gently. "I want to. You've shown me something I'd forgotten, Lily. That courage and integrity still matter in this world, that sometimes the most unlikely person can change everything." For the first time since he'd met her, Lily smiled, a real smile that transformed her face from serious and guarded to radiantly young. In that moment, Robert felt something shift within him, a door opening to emotions he had kept sealed away since losing his daughter. Outside the windows of Mitchell Enterprises, New York continued its nighttime rhythm, unaware of the drama unfolding in the glass tower. Two lives that should never have intersected had been brought together by chance and conspiracy, creating an unexpected connection that might yet prove transformative for them both. The morning brought a flurry of activity to Mitchell Enterprises. Robert had spent the night in his office, catching brief moments of sleep on the leather couch, while security teams and investigators worked through the evidence. By dawn, the picture had become crystal clear and devastating in its completeness. Victoria's betrayal extended far beyond a single act of sabotage. Forensic accountants had discovered a trail of financial maneuvers dating back nearly 3 years, all designed to position her advantageously in the event of Robert's sudden absence from the company. Legal documents had been prepared months ago, ready to be executed the moment she became the grieving widow. Even more damning, emails recovered from a private server revealed explicit communications between Victoria and James Harrington about their plans for Mitchell Enterprises after Robert was no longer in the picture. At 7 a.m., Robert convened An emergency meeting with his most trusted executives, legal counsel and security team. The boardroom, usually a place of strategic planning and business decisions, now felt like a war room. "The situation is unprecedented," explained Evelyn Chambers, Mitchell Enterprises' chief legal officer. "We have clear evidence of conspiracy to commit serious harm, corporate espionage and attempted hostile takeover through criminal means. The district attorney is preparing charges, but we need to manage this carefully from a corporate standpoint." Robert nodded, his expression grave, but composed. "My priority is protecting the company, our employees and our shareholders. Victoria's actions cannot be allowed to destabilize what we've all worked to build." "The markets will react," warned CFO David Reinhardt. "Once this becomes public, and it will, regardless of how we handle it, there will be volatility in our stock price." "Then we get ahead of it," Robert decided. "I'll address the board personally before the opening bell. We'll issue a statement, acknowledging a serious personal matter involving Victoria Mitchell that has no bearing on the operational strength or future of Mitchell Enterprises. We emphasize continuity, stability, and our unwavering commitment to our business objectives." The team continued planning their response, developing a strategy to protect the company while the legal process unfolded. Throughout the discussion, Robert remained focused and decisive, showing no outward sign of the personal devastation he must have felt. When the meeting concluded, only Michael Hayes remained behind with Robert. "Victoria is still at home," Michael reported quietly. "She doesn't know we've uncovered everything. Police are waiting for the final arrest warrant before moving in." Robert stared out at the Manhattan skyline, the rising sun casting a golden glow over the city. "And Harrington?" "Under surveillance. He tried to book a flight to Zurich this morning, but we've worked with authorities to delay his departure. They'll take him in for questioning within the hour." Robert turned back to his security director. "And Lily? How is she this morning?" Michael's expression softened slightly. "Sarah checked on her earlier. She's having breakfast in the executive dining room. Rachel is on her way to meet with her about the placement program." "I'd like to see her before Rachel arrives," Robert said. "There are some things I want to discuss." The executive dining room was normally reserved for board meetings and important client breakfasts. This morning it held just one occupant, a small girl in new clothes eating scrambled eggs while reading something on a tablet. Lily looked up when Robert entered, immediately setting aside the device. "Good morning," he said, taking a seat across from her. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in years," she admitted. "It's weird having a real bed again." Robert smiled, though the strain of the past 24 hours showed in the tightness around his eyes. "Lily, I wanted to update you before my sister arrives. The situation with Victoria has developed. The authorities will be taking action today." Lily nodded solemnly. "They're going to arrest her?" "Yes. The evidence is overwhelming." He hesitated, then continued. "I want to thank you again. Without your intervention yesterday, I wouldn't be sitting here now. The company would be in chaos, and Victoria and her accomplices would be implementing their plan." Lily shifted uncomfortably under his gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Robert said firmly. "They wouldn't have. Most people would have walked away, convinced it wasn't their problem. You showed extraordinary courage and character." A faint blush colored Lily's cheeks. She wasn't used to praise, especially from someone like Robert Mitchell. "I've been thinking about your situation," Robert continued. "Rachel will be here soon to discuss placement options with you. But before that happens, I wanted to make you an offer." Lily looked at him curiously. "My home in Westchester is large, much too large for one person, which is what it will effectively be after today. I have a full staff, including a housekeeper who lives on the property. There's a good school nearby. What would you think about staying there, at least temporarily?" Lily's fork clattered against her plate. "With you? Like foster care?" "More. Like a temporary guardianship, while we figure out what works best for you," Robert clarified. "Rachel would oversee everything to ensure it meets all legal requirements. You'd have your own space, privacy, access to education, and time to consider your longer-term options without pressure. The offer hung in the air between them. Lily stared at Robert, searching his face for any sign of insincerity or hidden motives. She had survived on the streets by being wary of anything that seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do that?" she finally asked. Robert considered his answer carefully. "Partially because I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. But more than that, you remind me of what really matters. This company, the wealth, the influence, it's all meaningless if it doesn't serve a greater purpose. Helping you feels like the most meaningful thing I could do right now." Before Lily could respond, the dining room door opened and Rachel Mitchell entered. She was dressed more casually than her brother, in jeans and a sweater. Her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, she carried a messenger bag overflowing with folders. "Good morning, you two," she said brightly, setting down her bag. "I see you've already started the conversation without me." Robert stood to greet his sister. "I was just sharing some thoughts with Lily about potential arrangements." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "I hope you weren't overwhelming her with options before I've had a chance to explain the program." "Actually," Lily spoke up, surprising both adults, "he offered to let me stay at his house, as a temporary guardian or something." Rachel's surprise was evident. She looked at her brother with new eyes as if seeing a side of him she had thought long buried. "Did he now? And what do you think about that, Lily?" Lily hesitated, glancing between the siblings. "I'm not sure. It sounds nice, but also weird. I mean, I just met him yesterday." Rachel nodded understandingly. "That's a perfectly reasonable reaction. This is a big decision, and there's no rush. We can discuss all the options, including Robert's offer, and you can take some time to think about what feels right for you." The three of them spent the next hour talking through possibilities. Rachel explained the youth placement program she had mentioned, its structure, benefits, and limitations. She outlined alternative options, including specialized foster care for older children and eventually transitional living programs for teens approaching adulthood. Throughout the discussion, she treated Lily with respect, asking for her input, rather than dictating what would happen to her. Robert mostly listened, offering occasional comments but allowing Rachel to lead the conversation given her expertise. It was clear to both Mitchell's siblings that Lily was extraordinarily bright, asking insightful questions about each option and carefully weighing the implications. Their discussion was interrupted by Michael Hayes, who appeared at the door with an urgent expression. "Robert, a moment, please." Robert excused himself. In the hallway, Michael kept his voice low. "It's happening now. The police are at your residence with the arrest warrant for Victoria. They've also picked up Harrington at his office. The district attorney wants to know if you'll be pressing additional charges related to corporate espionage." Robert nodded, processing this information. "Tell them yes. The full extent of the law, Michael. No leniency, no deals. Victoria and Harrington tried to destroy everything I've built, and they didn't care who got hurt in the process." "Understood. Also, the press has gotten wind that something's happening. Your PR team is fielding calls, but they need direction." "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Prepare the statement we discussed this morning. And Michael, ensure that Lily's name stays completely out of this. She's been through enough without becoming tabloid fodder." Michael nodded and departed. Robert took a deep breath before returning to the dining room. "I apologize for the interruption," he said to Rachel and Lily. "Some pressing business matters require my attention. Rachel, could you continue without me? And perhaps show Lily around the building a bit. I should be free again by early afternoon." Rachel understood immediately that something significant was happening. "Of course, Lily, and I have plenty to discuss, and I'd be happy to give her a tour." As Robert turned to leave, Lily called after him, "Is it Victoria? Are they arresting her now?" Robert paused, surprised by her perception. "Yes. How did you know?" Lily shrugged. "The security guy looks serious. And you got that same look on your face that you had last night when you were talking about her." Robert smiled faintly. "You're very observant, Lily. That will serve you well in life." He hesitated, then added, "I'll find you later, I promise. There are still things we need to discuss." After he left, Rachel turned to Lily with newfound curiosity. "You know, in all the years I've known my brother, and that's his entire life. I've never seen him connect with anyone the way he seems. To connect with you. Lily shifted uncomfortably. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Maybe, Rachel said thoughtfully. Or maybe it's more than that. Robert lost his daughter Jessica 15 years ago. After that, he threw himself into building his company, as if creating a business empire could fill the void her loss left behind. Then he married Victoria, thinking perhaps that would help him move forward. But he never really dealt with his grief. He just buried it deeper and deeper. Lily absorbed this information, thinking about the successful, powerful man who had offered her a home. And you think I remind him of his daughter? Rachel considered this. Not exactly. Jessica was much younger when she passed. I think you remind him of his humanity, the part of himself he locked away because it hurt too much to feel anything. You did something selfless for him, at risk to yourself, expecting nothing in return. That's rare in his world. Lily looked down at her hands, unsure how to respond to such an assessment. Come on, Rachel said, changing the subject. Let me show you around this palace in the sky my brother has built, and while we walk, you can tell me more about what you want for your future. As they explored the Mitchell Enterprises headquarters, Lily found herself opening up to Rachel in ways she hadn't with anyone since her mother died. She shared her love of mathematics and science, how she'd taught herself from library books. During the years she'd been unable to attend school. She talked about her dream of becoming an engineer someday, building things that would help people. Rachel listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that revealed her genuine interest. By the time they reached the research and development floor, where Mitchell Enterprises' innovative clean energy technologies were being developed, Lily was speaking animatedly about solar efficiency and battery storage, concepts she had gleaned from scientific journals she'd read during her long hours in the public library. You're remarkable, Lily, Rachel said as they watched engineers testing prototype solar panels. Most kids your age wouldn't understand half of what you're talking about. Lily shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. I had a lot of time to read. It's more than that. You have a gift, an analytical mind and genuine curiosity. Those qualities should be nurtured, not wasted on daily survival. As they continued their tour, Lily found herself considering Robert's offer more seriously. The Mitchell household would provide stability, security, and likely access to educational resources she couldn't get elsewhere. But more than that, there was something about Robert himself, a sadness beneath his confident exterior, a loneliness she recognized because she carried a similar weight. By midday, the news had broken. Victoria Mitchell had been arrested on charges of conspiracy and corporate espionage. James Harrington faced similar charges, with additional allegations of securities fraud. The business world was in shock, the story dominating financial news and spreading rapidly through social media. Robert had addressed the Mitchell Enterprises board, then issued a public statement expressing his shock and sadness at the betrayal, while emphasizing that the company remained strong and focused on its mission. Throughout the chaos, he had maintained his composure, the consummate business leader managing a crisis. But when he finally returned to find Lily and Rachel in the company's atrium garden, an indoor space filled with tropical plants and a small waterfall, the facade cracked slightly. He looked exhausted, the weight of the day evident in the slump of his shoulders. It's done, he said simply, joining them on a bench beside a koi pond. Victoria is in custody. The company is stabilized for now. Rachel touched her brother's arm sympathetically. I'm so sorry, Rob. No matter the circumstances, this must be incredibly difficult. He nodded, then turned to Lily. What about you? Have you had a chance to think about my offer? Lily met his gaze directly. Why do you really want me to stay with you? The truth. Robert seemed taken aback by her directness, but then smiled, faintly. The truth is complicated, Lily. Part of it is gratitude, yes. Part of it is recognizing that you have extraordinary potential that shouldn't be wasted. And part of it... He paused, searching for words. Part of it is that helping you feels like a step toward becoming the person I used to be before I lost my way in spreadsheets and acquisitions. His honesty surprised both Lily and Rachel. It wasn't the polished response of a corporate titan, but the genuine reflection of a man reassessing his life's priorities. "Okay," Lily said finally. "I'll try it, just to see if it works out." Relief, and something like joy flickered across Robert's face. "Thank you for giving it a chance. We'll take it one day at a time." As the three of them sat in the peaceful garden, surrounded by the gentle sound of falling water and the occasional splash of koi, an unlikely new beginning was taking shape, one that none of them could have imagined just 2 days earlier. The sea. Mitchell Estate in Westchester County stood like a sanctuary amid 5 acres of manicured grounds. Built in the colonial revival style, the white-columned mansion had originally been Robert's attempt to create the perfect family home after his marriage to Victoria. Instead, it had become a showpiece, impressive but hollow, hosting lavish parties but never truly feeling lived in. As Robert's car passed through the iron gates and wound up the tree-lined driveway, he glanced at Lily in the seat beside him. She stared wide-eyed at the sprawling property, her expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. "It's a lot to take in, I know," he said gently, "but try to think of it as just a house. A big one, admittedly, but still just a place where people live." Lily nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. "How many people actually live here?" "Besides me, there's Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper. She has an apartment over the garage. And Ellis, who manages the grounds and handles maintenance. He lives in the guest house with his wife, Sophia, who cooks when I have company. They've all been with me for years." The car stopped at the front entrance. Before Robert could say anything, the massive wooden door opened and a woman in her 60s emerged. Dressed in a simple blue dress with a cardigan, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, Mrs. Reynolds had the warm but no-nonsense demeanor of someone who had spent decades managing households. "Welcome home, Mr. Mitchell," she said, then turned her attention to Lily with a gentle smile. "And you must be Lily. We're very happy to have you here." Lily hesitated before stepping out of the car. 3 days ago, she had been sleeping behind a dumpster. Now she was arriving at a mansion, where people emerged to greet her, as if she were expected and welcome. The contrast was disorienting. "I've prepared the blue suite," Mrs. Reynolds continued as they entered the house. "I thought it might be nice. It overlooks the garden and has its own sitting room. But if you'd prefer a different room, we can certainly arrange that." The interior of the house was even more impressive than its exterior. Soaring ceilings, a grand staircase, antique furniture mixed with modern pieces, and art that Lily suspected cost more than most people's homes. Yet despite its grandeur, there was something sterile about the space, as if it had been designed to impress rather than comfort. "The blue suite is perfect. Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds," Robert said, setting down the small bag containing the few new belongings Lily had acquired over the past 2 days. "Perhaps you could show Lily around while I make some calls. I have a few matters to wrap up." Mrs. Reynolds nodded understandingly. The arrest of Victoria Mitchell had dominated the news cycle, and the business implications were still unfolding. "Of course, sir. We'll start with her rooms and then tour the house. Dinner will be ready whenever you're finished." As Robert disappeared into his study, Mrs. Reynolds turned to Lily with a warmth that seemed genuine rather than professional. "Now then, let's get you settled. I imagine this is all quite overwhelming." "A little," Lily admitted, following the housekeeper up the sweeping staircase. "Mr. Mitchell called yesterday to tell me you'd be coming," Mrs. Reynolds explained as they climbed. "He asked that we make everything as comfortable as possible for you, but not too fussy. I've worked for him for 15 years, and I've never heard such concern in his voice." Lily wasn't sure how to respond to this. She still couldn't quite comprehend why Robert Mitchell, a man who had every reason to focus solely on the crisis engulfing his personal and professional life, seemed so invested in her well-being. The sea. Blue Suite proved to be larger than any apartment Lily had ever lived in with her mother. A spacious bedroom with a canopied bed connected to a sitting room with bookshelves, a desk, and comfortable seating. The private bathroom featured a shower and a separate claw-foot tub that could easily fit 2 adults. "I know it's rather grand," Mrs. Reynolds said, noting Lily's wide-eyed expression, "but I hope you'll make it your own. Mr. Mitchell mentioned you enjoy reading and science. I took the liberty of stocking the shelves with books that might interest you." Lily approached the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines of physics textbooks, biographies of famous scientists, and novels that ranged from classics to contemporary young adult fiction. The thoughtfulness of the selection brought an unexpected lump to her throat. "Thank you," she managed, not trusting herself to say more. Mrs. Reynolds patted her shoulder gently. "There are clothes in the wardrobe and dresser, just basics for now. Mr. Mitchell suggested that you might want to select more things yourself once you're settled. The desk has a laptop computer for your schoolwork and whatever else interests you. Now, shall we continue the tour?" The house revealed itself as they walked. 6 bedrooms, a library, formal dining room, kitchen large enough for a restaurant, indoor pool, home gym, and a basement theater. Each space was meticulously designed and maintained, yet few showed signs of regular use. "Mr. Mitchell works in the city most days," Mrs. Reynolds explained as they returned to the main floor. "He usually comes home late, has dinner alone in his study, and is gone again by morning. Weekends, he's often traveling or attending business functions." "It doesn't seem like much of a home," Lily observed, then immediately worried she'd been rude. But Mrs. Reynolds only nodded. "You're perceptive, Lily. It hasn't been a true home in many years, not since—" She trailed off, seemingly reconsidering her words. "Since his daughter died?" Lily asked quietly. Mrs. Reynolds looked surprised. "He told you about Jessica?" "For little. His sister Rachel told me more." The housekeeper's expression softened. "Jessica was a wonderful child, full of life and curiosity. After the accident, Mr. Mitchell was, well, he was never the same. He built this house a few years later, when he married Victoria, but I don't think his heart was ever truly in it." Lily absorbed this information, thinking about the successful but solitary man who had inexplicably opened his home to her. What was she like? Victoria, I mean. Before everything. Mrs. Reynolds considered her answer carefully. She was elegant, intelligent, ambitious, but there was always a distance to her. She treated the house like a stage set for her social aspirations rather than a place to build a life together. She paused, then added with a hint of approval, "Unlike you, who asked about making it a home within 5 minutes of arriving." Before Lily could respond, Robert appeared in the hallway, looking weary but relieved. "Calls are finished. The company is stable, and the legal teams are handling everything else." He managed a small smile. "How do you like the house, Lily?" "It's amazing," she said honestly, "but huge. Do you ever get lost?" Robert laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "Not anymore, though I did wander into the wrong bedroom once, or twice when we first moved in. Mrs. Reynolds had to rescue me." "Only the once, sir," the housekeeper corrected with good humor. "Dinner is ready whenever you are. I've set the small dining room, but if you'd prefer the kitchen or your study—" "The small dining room is perfect," Robert interrupted. "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. Lily and I will eat together tonight." The small dining room could easily seat 8, but Mrs. Reynolds had arranged 2 place settings at one end of the table, making the space feel more intimate. The meal was simple but expertly prepared: roast chicken, seasonal vegetables, fresh bread. As they ate, Robert asked Lily about her tour of the house and what she thought of her rooms. "Everything is perfect," she assured him. "It's just a lot to get used to." "I understand," he said. "This isn't exactly a normal situation for either of us, but I meant what I said before. I want you to think of this as your home, at least for now. That means making it comfortable for you, not just accepting what's here." Lily considered this. The room is beautiful, but maybe a little perfect. Like a hotel room, not somewhere someone actually lives. Robert nodded. "Then we'll change that. Make a list of anything you'd like. Decorations, different furniture, paint colors. This house has never had much personality. Maybe it's time it did." After dinner, they moved to the library, where a fire had been lit in the massive stone fireplace. The room was Robert's favorite in the house, walls lined with books, leather chairs worn to comfortable softness, a space designed for thought rather than show. "Rachel will be coming tomorrow to begin the formal guardianship paperwork," Robert explained as they settled into chairs facing the fire. "She'll also help us arrange for your education. I've spoken with the head of Westhill Academy. It's a good school about 15 minutes from here. They're willing to assess you and develop a personalized program to address any gaps while challenging you appropriately. Lily tensed slightly. What if I can't keep up? I haven't been in a real school for 3 years. Rachel thinks, and I agree, that you're probably ahead in some areas and behind in others. The assessment will help determine where you stand, but from what I've seen, you're remarkably bright and motivated. I have no doubt you'll excel. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the flames dance. Finally, Lily asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. What happens when all this is over? The situation with Victoria, I mean. Robert considered her question thoughtfully. Legally, it will take months, possibly a year or more. The criminal charges, the divorce proceedings, the corporate implications, these things move slowly through the courts. But if you're asking what happens to you... He paused, choosing his words carefully. That depends partly on what you want. Lily? The guardianship arrangement Rachel is setting up is temporary by design, giving us both time to adjust and decide if this is the right solution long term. And if it is the right solution, I mean. Then we would discuss more permanent arrangements, Robert said simply. But there's no pressure, no timeline. You have a home here for as long as you want it. Lily nodded, staring into the fire. The events of the past 3 days felt like a dream, or perhaps more accurately, like stepping through a portal into someone else's life. Yet beneath the strangeness of her new circumstances, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Safety. Thank you, she said finally. Not just for the room and everything else, but for believing me yesterday. Most adults wouldn't have. Robert's expression grew serious. Adults often make the mistake of dismissing children's observations and insights. It's their loss. You saw what needed to be seen and had the courage to act on it. That's rare at any age. The clock on the mantel chimed 9. You should probably get some rest, Robert suggested. The last few days have been extraordinarily taxing, and tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Lily agreed, suddenly aware of the bone-deep exhaustion that had been held at bay by the excitement and nervousness of her new situation. As she stood to leave, Robert remained seated, gazing into the fire. Will you be going to bed too? She asked. He shook his head slightly. Not yet. I have some thinking to do. Sleep well, Lily. You too. When you eventually go to sleep, I mean. His smile was tinged with sadness. I will. And Lily, I'm glad you're here. Upstairs in the blue suite, Lily changed into the new pajamas that had been provided. Soft cotton things that felt like clouds against her skin after years of sleeping in whatever clothes she had. The bed was almost absurdly comfortable, with a mattress that seemed to conform perfectly to her body, and sheets so smooth they felt like water. Yet despite the luxury surrounding her, sleep eluded her. Everything had changed so rapidly her mind couldn't settle. After tossing and turning for nearly an hour, she gave up and moved to the window seat, looking out at the moonlit gardens below. The grounds were beautiful even in December, with evergreen shrubs providing structure and small lights illuminating the pathways. In the distance, she could see the guest house where Ellis and Sophia lived, a warm light glowing from its windows. Closer to the main house, the separate garage building stood with an apartment above, Mrs. Reynolds' domain. For all its grandeur, the estate felt oddly peaceful at night. Different from the constant noise and light of the city, but not the threatening darkness of alleyways and abandoned buildings either. Just quiet. Safe. Lily's thoughts turned to her mother. Sarah Harper had been a dedicated elementary school teacher, intelligent, loving, and determined to give her daughter every opportunity, despite their limited resources. She would have been amazed by the turn Lily's life had taken. Would she have approved of this arrangement with Robert Mitchell? Lily thought she would have, if she could have seen the genuine concern in his eyes when he looked at her. I'm okay. Mum, she whispered to the night, I think I might really be okay now. Below in the library, Robert Mitchell sat alone, watching the fire die down to embers. The past 3 days had shattered the carefully constructed framework of his life. His marriage exposed as a sham, his wife revealed as a criminal conspirator, his company temporarily destabilized by scandal. By all rights, he should have been devastated, even broken by such betrayal. Yet alongside the pain and disillusionment, he felt something unexpected, relief. As if a weight he had carried for years had been lifted, the facade of his marriage. To Victoria, the emptiness of the life they had crafted for public consumption, all of it stripped away, leaving only truth in its wake. And then there was Lily, a child who had appeared from nowhere, saving him from physical harm, only to then, unexpectedly begin healing something deeper. Her presence in his house already made it feel more like a home than it ever had. Her questions, her observations, her resilience in the face of hardship, all of it reminded him of what truly mattered beyond balance sheets and board meetings. Robert added another log to the dying fire, watching as flames licked at the fresh wood. For the first time in 15 years, since losing Jessica, he allowed himself to think about the future in personal terms rather than professional ones. Not just the next acquisition or expansion, but the possibility of finding meaning in something as simple as helping a child find her way in the world. It wouldn't be easy. The legal battles with Victoria would be ugly. The press would speculate endlessly about his motives for taking in a homeless girl. Lily herself would face challenges adjusting to her new life, education, and surroundings. There would be setbacks and difficult days ahead. But for now, in the quiet of his library, Robert Mitchell felt something he had forgotten existed: hope. Upstairs, Lily finally returned to bed, fatigue overtaking her racing thoughts. As she drifted towards sleep, she wondered what tomorrow would bring in this strange new world she had entered. School assessments, legal paperwork, learning to navigate a mansion, and the expectations that came with it. Yet, despite the uncertainty, one thought provided comfort as she finally surrendered to exhaustion. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't have to worry about where she would sleep tomorrow night. Then somehow, against all odds, she had found someone who seemed to need her as much as she needed him. 3 years later. Spring sunshine filtered through the newly installed skylight in what had once been the formal sitting room of the Mitchell estate. Now the space served as Lily's workshop, a creative chaos of tools, technology, and half-completed projects. The 15-year-old bent over a complex assembly of gears and circuitry, her brow furrowed in concentration as she made minute adjustments with a precision screwdriver. "How's it coming along?" Robert asked from the doorway, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. Lily looked up, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. She had grown several inches over the past 3 years, her once gaunt frame now healthy and strong. The frightened, wary child had transformed into a confident teenager with bright eyes and a quick smile. "Almost there," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The power distribution still isn't quite right, but I think I've figured out where the problem is." She gestured to the device on her workbench, a solar-powered water purification system she had designed for her science fair project. "Once I fix this circuit, it should be able to process 10 gallons per hour using only the integrated solar panels." Robert examined the device with genuine interest. "The miniaturization is impressive. How did you solve the filter issue?" "I didn't, not completely," Lily admitted, "but I modified the approach based on that MIT paper we read last month. Their membrane technology is still more efficient, but this version can be built with locally available materials in developing regions." Pride swelled in Robert's chest as he listened to her explain the technical details. In 3 years, Lily had not only caught up academically, but had surged ahead, particularly in science and engineering. West Hill Academy had initially placed her in a special program to address the gaps in her formal education. But within 6 months, she had joined regular classes. By the end of her first year, she was taking advanced courses and working on independent projects that challenged even her teachers. "The science fair is next Friday, right? Should I move my meeting with the Tokyo investors?" Robert asked, sitting down on a stool beside her workbench. "Don't be ridiculous," Lily replied with a smile that softened her words. "It's just a high school science fair, not a Nobel Prize ceremony. Besides, Mrs. Reynolds already promised to come and take embarrassing photos to show you later." Robert chuckled. "Fair enough, but I want a full demonstration when I get back." The easy banter between them reflected the relationship that had developed over the past 3 years, a blend of guardian and ward, mentor and protege, and something uniquely their own that defied simple categorization. The temporary guardianship had become permanent after 6 months, with Rachel's support and guidance throughout the legal process. To the outside world, Robert Mitchell had become the unexpected adoptive father of a formerly homeless girl. To those who knew them, they had become a family forged through circumstance but strengthened by genuine connection. "Did you see the morning news?" Lily asked, returning to her work on the device. Robert nodded, his expression turning more serious. Victoria's appeal was denied. The conviction stands. The legal aftermath of Victoria's arrest had been lengthy and complex. She had eventually been convicted on multiple charges, including conspiracy and corporate espionage, receiving a substantial prison sentence. James Harrington had faced similar charges, along with securities fraud and attempted market manipulation. The scandal had rocked the business world, but ultimately strengthened Mitchell Enterprises as Robert implemented governance reforms and refocused the company on innovation rather than acquisition. "How do you feel about it?" Lily asked carefully. She had learned when to push and when to give Robert space on difficult topics. He considered the question, appreciating her directness. "Relieved that it's finally over. Sad that things came to this end. But mostly I feel like the final chapter of that part of my life has closed." He paused, sipping his coffee. "I received the final divorce decree last week. Victoria's legal team had been fighting over certain assets, but the judge ruled in my favor given the circumstances." "Does that mean we can finally renovate the East Wing?" Lily asked, lightening the mood. She had been campaigning to transform the unused portion of the house into a community space for educational programs, an idea that had evolved from her own experience of finding refuge in public libraries during her time on the streets. Robert smiled. "Yes, the renovation can proceed. I've already spoken with the architect about your ideas. They'll be sending preliminary plans next week." Lily set down her tools, her expression suddenly serious. "Thank you, not just for the renovation, but for just everything. Sometimes I still can't believe how my life changed that day." Robert rarely allowed himself to think about what might have happened if Lily hadn't overheard those men in the alley, if she hadn't made the brave decision to warn him. The alternative would have been devastating on multiple levels, not just the potential harm to himself, but the loss of everything they had built together over the past 3 years. "I'm the one who should be thanking you," he said quietly. "You didn't just save my life that day, Lily. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. A purpose beyond business success, a reason to come home at night." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that only exists between people who truly understand each other. Then Lily's phone chimed with a message, breaking the mood. "That's Maya," she said, checking the screen. "We're supposed to meet at the library to work on our history presentation. Is it okay if I take the car?" Robert nodded. "Of course, just be home for dinner. Ellis is making that pasta you like, and Rachel's coming over to discuss the summer program." The summer program was Lily's brainchild, an intensive STEM workshop for underprivileged middle school students, hosted at Mitchell Enterprises and funded by the newly established Harper Mitchell Foundation. Named in honor of Lily's mother and Robert's daughter, the foundation supported educational initiatives for vulnerable youth across New York City. After Lily left, Robert moved through the transformed house that had once been merely a showpiece. The formal spaces had been repurposed into areas that reflected their actual lives, the sitting room becoming Lily's workshop, the rarely used music room converted to a shared study where they often spent evenings reading or discussing ideas. Even the kitchen had been remodeled to be more functional and welcoming, with Mrs. Reynolds finally getting the professional-grade appliances she had long deserved. Robert's phone rang. It was Michael Hayes, still his head of security, but now also overseeing the Foundation's community outreach programs, a role that utilized his protective instincts in a different but equally valuable way. "Robert, the board approved the expansion of the mentorship program," Michael reported. "We can start implementing in 5 additional schools next semester." Excellent news. Has Lily seen the numbers yet? Not yet. I thought you might want to share them with her yourself. She's been the driving force behind this initiative from the beginning. Robert agreed, making a mental note to bring it up. At dinner, Lily would be thrilled. The mentorship program had been her response to learning that many children in the foster system and homeless shelters lacked consistent adult guidance and support. After ending the call, Robert went to his home office to complete some work before dinner. On his desk sat a framed photograph that had not been there 3 years ago. A picture of Lily at her first science fair, standing proudly next to her project on urban gardening technologies. Beside it was an older photo of Jessica, laughing, on a swing, her eyes bright with joy. For years after Jessica's accident, Robert had kept all reminders of her hidden away, the pain too great to confront daily. Now her picture stood as a reminder of both what he had lost and what he had found, a way to honor her memory by opening his heart again. His computer chimed with an incoming video call from Sarah Williams, his executive assistant, who had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer last year. "The quarterly reports are ready for your review," Sarah said after they exchanged greetings. "And the innovation team has some promising results from the Sustainable Housing Project." They specifically mentioned that Lily's input on the water recycling component was invaluable. Robert smiled at this. Lily had become a familiar presence at Mitchell Enterprises, spending time in the research labs and offering perspectives that often challenged the company's seasoned engineers. Her unique background gave her insights into practical applications that more traditionally educated experts sometimes missed. "Schedule a meeting with the team for next week," Robert instructed. Lily would love to see their progress firsthand. After finishing his work, Robert wandered into the garden where Ellis was tending to the vegetable beds that had been Lily's project the previous summer. What had begun as a small herb garden had expanded into an impressive array of produce that supplemented their table and provided regular donations to a local food bank. "She's got a real gift," Ellis commented, noticing Robert watching. These tomato plants were struggling until she adjusted the soil composition. "Now look at them. Healthiest crop I've seen in years." "She has many gifts," Robert agreed. "I'm just grateful she's willing to share them with us." Later that evening, dinner became an impromptu celebration when Robert shared the news about the mentorship program expansion. Lily's excitement was contagious, leading to an animated discussion about future initiatives and potential collaborations with other organizations. "We could integrate it with the summer workshop," she suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. "Create a continuous support system that extends beyond the 6-week program." Rachel, who had arrived midway through dinner, watched the exchange with evident satisfaction. "You two are quite the team," she observed. "It's remarkable what you've accomplished in 3 years." After dinner, while Rachel and Lily discussed the logistics of the summer program in the living room, Robert stepped onto the terrace, taking in the peaceful evening. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple as the sun set over the Westchester landscape. Rachel joined him a few minutes later, handing him a glass of wine. "Penny for your thoughts?" Robert smiled at his sister. "Just reflecting on how much has changed. 3 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. The company, my marriage, my life. I couldn't have been more wrong." "And now," Rachel prompted. "Now I understand what actually matters," he said simply. "It's not the empire or the accolades. It's making a difference in someone's life, creating something meaningful together." Rachel nodded, leaning against the terrace railing beside him. "You know, when you first told me you wanted to take in a homeless girl you'd just met, I thought you were having some sort of crisis. I was worried about both of you, her safety with a virtual stranger, your ability to connect with a child after all these years of isolation." "You weren't wrong to be concerned," Robert acknowledged. "It was impulsive, out of character for me." "But it was also the best decision you ever made," Rachel finished. "I've never seen you so engaged, so present in your own life. And Lily, the transformation in her is nothing short of miraculous. Not just the physical changes, but her confidence, her sense of security, her willingness to trust again." From inside came the sound of Lily's laughter, as she talked on the phone with one of her friends from school, a normal teenage moment that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. "We saved each other," Robert said quietly. "Though she did the harder part. I just had to open my home. She had to overcome years of trauma and instability. Don't underestimate what you've given her, Rob. A stable home is just the beginning. You've shown her that she matters, that her ideas have value, that she deserves a place in this world. That's a gift beyond measure." They fell into comfortable silence, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Inside, Lily had moved to the piano, another skill she had developed over the past 3 years, and the gentle melody drifted out to the terrace. "She's playing Jessica's favorite song," Robert observed, a bittersweet smile crossing his face. "I know," Rachel said softly. "She asked me about it last week. Wanted to learn it as a surprise for you." The simple gesture touched Robert deeply. Lily had found ways to honor Jessica's memory without trying to replace her, understanding intuitively that healing didn't mean forgetting. Later that night, after Rachel had gone and the house had settled into quiet, Robert found Lily in the library, curled up in her favorite chair with a book on renewable energy technologies. "Busy day tomorrow," he commented, taking the chair opposite her. "Science, project, history presentation, and you mentioned something about a debate team meeting." Lily nodded, marking her place in the book. "And college brochures to look through. Ms. Winters says it's not too early to start considering options, especially for engineering programs with competitive admissions." "She's right, though I'm not quite ready to think about you leaving for college," Robert admitted. "The house would be too quiet without you building small robots at the breakfast table." Lily grinned. "That was one time, and in my defense it was supposed to be a more efficient coffee maker, until it achieved sentience and tried to drown us in espresso." Their shared laughter echoed in the warm space. When it faded, Lily's expression grew more thoughtful. "Do you ever think about how random it all was? If I hadn't been in that exact alley at that exact moment." "I try not to," Robert said honestly. "The possibilities are too disturbing. But I've come to believe it wasn't entirely random, Lily. Two people who needed each other, whose lives would be transformed by their connection. Perhaps there was something more deliberate in that convergence than mere chance." "Like fate?" she asked skeptically, ever the budding scientist. "Like patterns we don't yet have the perspective to fully comprehend," he suggested. "The universe operating on principles beyond our current understanding." Lily considered this. Maybe, or maybe it was just human decency, doing the right thing even when it's hard or scary. "That's the most important pattern of all," Robert agreed. "The choices we make when faced with moral crossroads. You chose courage and compassion that day. I try to remember that whenever I face difficult decisions now." Lily yawned, the long day finally catching up with her. "I should get some sleep. Busy day tomorrow, like you said." As she stood to leave, Robert was struck again by how much she had grown, not just physically but in confidence and purpose. The frightened child from the streets had become a young woman with dreams, talents, and the determination to make them reality. "Good night, Robert," she said, pausing at the library door. "Good night, Lily," he replied. "Sleep well." After she left, Robert remained in the library, surrounded by books and the comfortable silence of a home at peace. Outside, the stars continued their ancient patterns across the night sky. Inside, two lives that had been broken in different ways had found healing through their unexpected connection. 3 years ago, a desperate choice in a New York alley had changed everything. A child with nothing had saved a man who had everything but valued none of it. Together, they had created something neither could have imagined alone. Not just a home or a foundation or educational programs, but a family built on choice rather than obligation, on mutual respect rather than mere circumstance. As Robert finally headed upstairs to his own room, he passed the door to the blue suite, now thoroughly transformed into Lily's space, walls covered with scientific posters and art, bookshelves, overflowing with volumes on every subject, desk cluttered with projects and notes. No longer a pristine guest room, but a lived-in sanctuary for a remarkable young woman. He smiled to himself, remembering her first night in the house, her observation that it didn't feel like a home. She had been right then, but not anymore. Together, they had transformed not just the physical space but the emotional landscape of their lives, and in doing so, they had created something neither had dared to hope for after their respective losses, a future bright with possibility and purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to make a difference. But for tonight, in the quiet of the Mitchell estate, all was as it should be. Two people who had once been lost had found their way, not back to what they had been before, but forward to something new and unexpectedly beautiful. In a world that often seemed defined by what was taken away, they had discovered the power of what could be given, second chances, new beginnings, and the profound healing that comes from finding family in the most unexpected places.